So just to get a sense of what we're talking about in internal grants within the college, there are other internal grants within the university that we share information about. There is a grant for approved dissertation research. This is a less intensive grant writing process than the next one, which is for non-dissertation research. And the third is for faculty research. And we've had students involved in all of these because sometimes faculty involve their students in the research. And the forms are all available on the college's Research and Graduate Studies webpage and the forms page of the Unit of Student Affairs in the college. So these are widely available. We are working on an online method for getting the form completed. We're not there yet, but Andy Salozzi has been working very hard on that. Close to it. The definitions of these approaches are that the dissertation research must be for an approved dissertation topic, so that if you are applying for that, it's not for the dissertation you might do sometime down the road, but for the dissertation that your committee has already approved, because the level of review of the research committee is a somewhat lesser review because the procedures have already been vetted through your dissertation committee. We also have not, but need to specify that that our intention is that this covers the thesis as well as the dissertation. So we have 2 new departments in the college. Those departments are Human and Consumer Sciences and Recreation and Sport Pedagogy. Those departments have master's degrees and they don't have doctoral degrees, and those students typically write a thesis. In our other 3 departments, I can count on my one hand the thesis students we've had in the last 5 years. Typically they're master's research projects or seminar papers or some other exit project, but not a true thesis. Whereas the case is the opposite in the other 2 departments. So we do want to support thesis work as well. Again, it would also be an approved thesis. It wouldn't just be a thesis that somebody has in their mind. This is partial funding of research costs for Athens campus graduate students. None of this ever covers everything. And when we get to talking about the budget a little bit, you'll see why that's an important distinction. And we, thus far, are persisting with our rule of thumb that we used under quarters, and we're persisting with that into semesters as having applications due on or before the Friday of the 6th full week of an academic term. So we may change that. We may have a 3rd reading, depending on how things go this year. This is our transition year, so we'll see how that works. The amounts and eligibility. The amount is limited to $1,000 to fund projects or to match funds from an external grant. There is another $1,000 possible, so if you have external funding, you can get up to a match equivalent to how much you have in external funding. We have a number of students do that. Eligible expenses must be directly related to the research itself, or preparing or presenting the results of the research. We are less often funding the presentation because mostly we're doing partial funding, and so there's not enough money to send people places to do the presentation, although we do ask for a dissemination plan. And these awards are on a reimbursement basis, so that it's not, we don't just hand you a check and you go off and spend it. You collect your receipts from the expenditures and turn them in. Yes?
How do you define external? For example, if a student were to get a GSS, a Graduate Student Senate travel award, would that be considered external because it's external to the college?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a way to get your money for travel you put in for the lottery GSS, and then that would count as the match here.
So the funds that we're talking about here, these aren't just for research, these are also for travel? I thought those were 2 separate things.
In the college, the travel fund is different.
Yes.
It might be possible to get travel funding on these, although we've not seen any that have done that in the last, I haven't seen any. because the travel that we support typically is for travel to sites to gather the research as opposed to present the research. There's a separate fund in the college and student travel grants, and mostly our students ask for their travel money from that fund. University, however, has a fund called the Graduate Student Senate, and we actually use that as a match for our higher level of funding for the student travel board. So this match might, if they got a provost's undergraduate, well, that's undergraduate. Well, we've had some undergraduates apply for these. Mostly we use this because it's called the Graduate Research Fund, but we have had some undergraduates. But let's say they applied for, there are some small grants for graduate students.
Yeah, and I can talk about that maybe later, the funding programs out of the research office that could be used as match for these.
So there is a 2-year maximum period for expenditure of funds. That is much better than it used to be. It used to be you had to expend within like 90 days, but we've worked it out because these are foundation funds. We have a little